This boy is so crazy. He caught a large Carol trout, but then he used it as bait on the hook and threw it back into the sea, which surprised everyone. Isn't he afraid of losing money with such an expensive bait? But the boy is very confident, saying he's very lucky. Just 10 minutes ago, his bait was just some worthless small fish. One good thing about fishing in the Philippines is you never have to worry about coming up empty-handed. Soon he caught a fish, and the boy quickly reeled it in, smoothly pulling up a half-kilo Carol trout. After tossing the fish into the water-filled boat, he didn't hesitate long before hooking another small fish and casting it into the sea. Soon, the fishing line felt a huge pull. The boy quickly pulled it up and caught a red snapper weighing about a pound. It's another Carol trout. Even though he's used to all kinds of situations, the boy couldn't help but grin. This fish could earn him a week's living expenses. He continued fishing, but this time, he caught a grouper baby weighing about half a kilo. The boy looked disappointed. Although groupers are expensive, babies are not worth much. It seems that relying on luck alone isn't very efficient. So he made a bold decision and pulled out a huge foam float. You can tell from his actions that he's about to go all in. But no one expected him to actually pick up the Carol trout he had just caught and put it on the hook, using a week's living expenses as a bet. This is too crazy. With such an expensive fish as bait, even if he catches a fish, he may not necessarily recover his costs. Seeing the boy's confident look, I became more and more curious. After tying the fishing line to the mast, he let it slowly lengthen the fishing line to fish. Then he cast another hook with a small fish as bait. This time, he was lucky. He used a Carol trout as bait and immediately caught another Carol trout, bigger and fatter than the previous one, weighing about 2 kilograms. The more you invest, the more you get in return. But the boy just smiled faintly and quietly waited for his next hook. At this moment, the fishing line next to him suddenly started shaking, and the line he had baited with Carol trout caught a fish. The boy resisted his curiosity and quickly pulled the fishing line madly. But this big fish was unusual. Its strength was so great that he couldn't pull it up for a moment, and his face turned purple. The boy struggled with the fish for a long time before gaining the upper hand and slowly reeling in the fishing line. It really makes me curious. What big fish will he catch this time? Half a minute later, a huge figure slowly emerged. It turned out to be a huge black grouper. It was too heavy for the boy to lift up, so he had to use a hook to bring it up. It was even more shocking on the boat. You couldn't tell underwater, but now it's clear that this fish is terrifyingly large, weighing at least 25 kilograms. It looked thicker than the boy and even wider than the boat when laid horizontally. Although groupers are cheaper than Carol trouts, such a large one can completely cover the cost of the Carol trout and still make a profit. Excited, the father and son arrived at the seafood market. Upon weighing, they discovered that this fellow weighed a whopping 27 kilograms, ultimately exchanging it for 7,840 pesos from the boss. Do you think it's worth it? This boy is even more remarkable. He eagerly emptied his trap, only to find a few worthless small fish. Bringing them home would surely result in a scolding, so why not use them as bait and continue fishing? Perhaps there could be a better catch awaiting him. He picked out a fish, chopped it up, hung it on the hook, and threw it into the sea. Will it succeed this time? After the bait sank, he held the fishing line in his hand and slowly pulled it up, tightening the line immediately before the fish could struggle. Though not fast, his strong pulling quickly exhausted the big fish. Upon pulling it onto the boat, he discovered it was a Carol trout weighing 1.5 kilos. It's surprising to have such a good catch on the first try. The boy happily opened the floodgate. Once the fish dies, it loses its value. This Carol trout is very valuable on the market, and its cost today is almost zero. What a windfall! After this sweet success, the boy wasted no time. This time, he took a slightly larger fish, cut it in half, and hung the tail on the hook, casting it into the sea. This fish was quickly hooked, but it exerted tremendous force. Despite the effort, the boy used his endurance to pull it up in one go. This time, it turned out to be a beautiful large grouper with a very smooth body surface. Although not as valuable as the Carol trout, it can still fetch a good price. The fish was thrown into the cabin. The boy didn't forget the leftover half of the fish head from earlier, which he also hooked onto the line. Again, reeling in was tough. I worried about the boy's weak arms breaking. And is it illegal for Filipinos to wear gloves while fishing? Watching it makes my hands ache too. And after seeing his catch, it really surprised me. No wonder there's such a terrifying force behind it. And it turns out to be about 5 kilograms of supersized grouper. The grouper did not stop struggling on the boat, and the boy didn't have the patience to watch its performance and directly picked it up on the boat. This big mouth seems to see the stomach at a glance. Really curious whether the grouper is hollow. After unhooking, It was thrown into the cabin and reunited with its counterparts. In less than 20 minutes, he harvested 3 valuable fish in a row, and income suddenly increased, with countless surprises waiting for him in the future. He also did the same thing next time, cutting the fish in half as bait and throwing it into the water. After letting out down scenes of fish lines, he quietly waited on the boat and immediately pulled up the fish line as soon as there was movement. In less than 3 minutes, he caught another big red fish. It turned out to be another Carol trout, and it was twice as big as the previous one. The boy was very excited, and his actions putting the fish into the cabin were much gentler. Then he cast the fishing hook again. What surprise would there be this time? My goodness, it was another Carol trout, and it was very large, very difficult to pull up onto the boat. Catching the big Carol trout in a row, the boy decided to stop fishing. Back at the seafood market, after the boss's estimate, he was finally given 5,340 pesos, although not as much as imagined, for the return of 2 hours of fishing. It was already quite generous. Would you like to experience such a life? Follow me to discover a new world every day.